Strong information, strong reaction. I quote Dr. Jennifer Kunst here, with thanks. Maybe you know the saying, when you point one finger, there are 3 fingers pointing back to you. Jesus had a version of this wisdom when he said, don't focus on the speck in your brother's eye whilst ignoring the plank in your own. When cruel accusations fly, we all need to hear the voice of reason that says, look in the mirror, sister, you might just be talking to yourself. Teachers Lou and Ling used to come to the UK regularly to teach Qigong to my students. To date, they visit us 6 or 7 times. One of the favourite games my teacher Ling, liked to play with me, and I'm guessing with my colleagues, was the following. We'd be sitting in a car or at a breakfast table. She'd say something like, we love coming to the UK and staying with you and your family. You know, out of the 3 teachers, you're our favourite one, don't you? For the first 5 years, I would gush and say something like, oh, that's lovely, thank you so much, blah, 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 blah. I really wanted my teachers to like me. I wanted it too much. I needed them to validate me as a teacher. It took me a long time to uncover that pattern, to see what was really happening. Every year they came to the UK and tested my ego. Was Jeremy's ego still huge and fully intact? Yes. Tick. He still not understood our message and looked at his personal triggers. He still needs our validation. It started to dawn on me how often I'd fallen into that trap. If you don't review and reassess your life, you'll just do it over and over again. Last visit, Ling said to me, you know you're my favourite teacher in the UK, don't you? To which I smiled and replied, you know you're my favourite teacher in China, don't you? Which got a good belly laugh out of her at least. Slowly I'm getting there. I'm certainly not suggesting I've dissolved that trigger, but at least I'm seeing it for what it is. West Norwood Roundabout was my teacher for the longest of times. In the busy suburb of London that I lived in for nearly 20 years, this circulatory traffic system was my daily chore. I've written about it before, which indicates how deeply I felt it. If you knew the area well, then you'd select the correct lane and wait patiently in line. If you were new to the area, you'd suddenly find yourself in a whirlpool of traffic, find yourself in the wrong lane, and then be forced to cut in front of a seething me. Brixton is also full of young lads in fast whips whose sole avowed intention in life, it seemed, was to cut in front of me. And I was 100% sure that they knew how the traffic system worked, but they just did it anyway. Cue smoke coming out of Jeremy's ears and a sharp stream of expletives that would make a Marine blush. Why these triggers? Well, I don't need a huge amount of self-analysis here. My dad was a great one for shouting at traffic. For the longest of time, I had imposter syndrome as a teacher. My rocky circumstances of my birth left me a pretty needy person. We use a phrase in Zheneng Qigong, Yi Dao, Qi Dao. Essentially it translates as, where your mind goes, your energy flows. We often instruct people to put their minds to a task. When we apply our minds, things start to happen. When we subconsciously apply our minds, sometimes bad things can happen. Did you know that 95% of your daily mind activity is totally subconscious? Stop for a moment and think how busy your head would be. Thank heavens we don't have to listen to all the rubbish that's going on in the background. It would be like trying to read a complex book in the middle of a football stadium filled with cheering supporters. So, in the idea, where your mind goes, your energy flows, we start to uncover the roots that can lead to chronic illness. Let's take shouting at drivers as an example. It's almost hardwired from a very young age, learned at a father's knee. Perhaps it's symptomatic of an urge to shout at shop assistants, to be rude to train guards, to growl at one's children and shout at one's wife. The car thing is just the tip of an iceberg. Maybe it comes from some deep-seated fear or inbuilt hatred of the other, also learnt at a parent's knee or a strict school. Everything becomes a trigger, fired off from this very deep root. Anger, anger, and anger all day and every day. Eventually, following the Chinese medicine theory, we discover that this person has liver cancer. Anger is rooted in the liver and suppresses the liver function. So a pattern has eventually led to an angry person becoming ill. I see it with my clients daily. Lack of love, childhood trauma, distant parents, money worries, stressful jobs, unkind partners. They all set up patterns that eventually lead to illness. Your patterns lead you to illness. Let's just underline that once more. You find a pattern by looking at the way you react to a situation. I mean, it has to happen in hindsight first. You read something on the news. It makes you feel angry. You go to work and you tell everybody about this thing. And you talk about it endlessly. Remember, point the finger at yourself first before you point the finger at Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, etc. What is it that you've read that has stirred something so deep inside? Is your social patterning so deep that you have disagreed with something at a gut level? In these cases, we've often just grown up to be conservatives or a Democrat because our father was. So many of our views are just shorthand gut reactions without us ever bothering to question why. Do you want to run the country? Okay, then stop moaning. Better than that, how can you start to find the ideas that rule your life? If somebody asks you to do something, and your first answer is always, no, why is that? Do you always pick the same bad partner? Do you never want to go out just in case? Why do you always tell your children the same thing that your mother told you, even though you know it not to be useful? How do you even stop it? Reviewing your day before bed is a great way. Sit for a few minutes, pat yourself on the back a little bit for anything you did particularly well, and look carefully at the things you didn't handle well. Could I have been kinder to that traffic warden, shop assistant, person on the phone? Ask yourself why. What were the reasons that you reacted that way? Where do these things come from? I've written before about my friend who explained to me, when I sit in meditation and sometimes my mind is just too busy, I just decide to watch each thought and classify it. Eventually they quieten down anyway. Well, I made some pigeonholes. Money worries, work worries, relationship worries, children worries, the list goes on, but you get the idea. These are the roots that fire off triggers and thoughts that rule our daily lives, if we let them. If you can start to recognize them for what they are, then you can control them. That thought came up because of my neediness, driven by the circumstances of my birth. Now I see how it's controlling me and what the situation is likely to fire it up. You see these things enough times that you start to realize that there are very few routes, but that they fire in creatively different ways. Isn't the mind clever? Eventually, you'll see that there's only a few of them. When examined in the cold light of day, you can start to see that what served you as a 6-year-old child no longer works as an adult. Point the finger at yourself often enough, and they start to fade away, leaving a very different and more healthy mind, and therefore a more healthy body too. This is an opportunity to change your life for the better. The next time you receive strong information from your teacher, be it a teacher or a traffic system, look everywhere for your lessons. How will you react? Do you respond badly to authority? Will you complain that your teacher shouldn't be teaching you because of the things they say? Or will you see there may be a plank in your own eye that needs removing first? In our universe of yin and yang, we always try to seek balance. The pendulum swings back and forth. What is bad today will be good tomorrow and bad again next week. It's important to realize that there's no such thing as good or bad, just the way you view them or let them strike you. It's important to see the outside world as a series of events, not a series of things being done to you. There's a choice in every moment. Will you choose yin or yang? You have the power to react to anything in whatever way you wish. If your first reaction is anger, ask yourself why. If you get triggered by a strong information, why? Can you hear strong information and allow it to pass through you? Or will it hit you square in the chest and knock you flat again and again? It's all about your level of self-mastery. I really hope this article helps you get some perspective on what's going on in your life. You know you're my favourite student, right? Love, love, love and bliss.